everybody. So this is what we're going to do now is hear a series of stories that are leading us up into Easter. So these are all stories that come from Holy Week in the church. If you are following along, if you have this Bible, we are going to start on page 462, and we are going to read a series of stories all the way through page 481. I'm actually going to break them apart into separate videos because I think there are a lot of really important things that are happening in these stories, and it might be nice for you to have a chance to stop and talk with your parents about what's going on in these stories if you can do that. And then you don't have to watch all of them at once. You could do one a night leading up into Easter if you wanted to do that, instead of just listening to all these stories as we go straight through them. So of course, at the end of every chapter there's a little star, and these chapters or these stories all have little questions that you can think about and talk about with your siblings, or with your parents, or other people who are in your home with you, as we're thinking about what is important for us to remember as we're leading into Easter. So some of these stories are sad, but ultimately remember, this is one of these really great and important stories that help us really understand what Jesus sacrificed for us and how important of a force he was. Not, of course, in our lives still, but in the world at the time he was alive. So we are going to start with the Last Supper. Turn this way. All right. So here we go, the Last Supper. This is page 462, or if you are following along or comparing the stories from your Bible, in the Bible, this is Matthew 26, verse 14 is where we're starting. Okay. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world. He wanted to share his last Passover meal together with his 12 closest friends, the disciples. Jesus loved his friends and wanted to show them his love in a very caring way. As the friends got ready for the meal, Jesus put water in a large bowl and knelt down on the floor. He wanted to wash the feet of each disciple. When it was Peter's turn, Peter said to Jesus, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus replied, "Peter, you don't understand what I am doing now, but you will later." Peter loved Jesus so much that he said, "Then don't just wash my feet, but my head and hands also." Peter wanted to be as close to Jesus as possible. As they were eating, Jesus sadly told his disciples, "Soon one of you will betray me. One of you will tell people who don't like me where I am, so they can take me away." This upset the disciples, and each one said, "It's not me you're talking about, is it?" When Judas said this, Jesus gently replied, "Yes, Judas, you will betray me." Then Jesus picked up a loaf of bread. He blessed it and gave some to each of his friends, saying, "Take this bread and eat it. This is my body." Then Jesus picked up a cup of wine. He gave thanks and said, "Drink this. It is my blood, which I must give up so the sins of people may be forgiven." When the meal was over, Jesus and his friends went to a place called the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives. Jesus said sadly, "Soon you will all leave me." Peter felt bad. "Even if all the others leave you, I won't," he said. Jesus looked at his dear friend and said quietly, "Before the sun rises, you will pretend you don't know me 3 times. Peter said, "Jesus, I love you too much to ever do that to you." And all of the other disciples said the same thing. So that's the story of the Last Supper, and our star says, what can you do to show people that you love them? So in this story, of course, Peter didn't want Jesus to wash his feet, but Jesus said, that was important for him to do. And so Peter eventually said, "Okay, you can wash my feet, but also my head and my hands." I have not often requested that people wash my feet. But maybe you could think of some other things that you do if it's not washing people's feet, but maybe other things that you do to show people that you love them. And then just, think about how hard that would be to know that you were having the last meal that you were going to have with your best and most favorite people, and how hard that would be, and how hard and sad that must have been for Jesus to be going through that. And then I want you to think, I had the vocabulary word, and I lost it. Nope. Maybe you get lucky and don't get a vocabulary word this time. I do think it would be really cool for you to think about or to look up what the word disciple actually means. We know what that word means in relation to these stories. We know that in these stories, the disciples were referring to the 12 people who really followed Jesus and were, like it says in this story, his best friends. But what does that word mean outside of the context of these stories that we are listening to? All right. So that is the story of the Last Supper. The next story that we are going to do is called Jesus is Betrayed, and I'm going to put that in a separate video. So go ahead and stop and talk with other people, or think about this, or do some of the activity pages or coloring pages right now if you want. Or you can just go right on ahead to the next video, which is the story Jesus is Betrayed.